I don't see much of a difference between my spirituality and my creativity. I see them both as coming from the same drives and the same desires within me. The desire to connect with others, the desire to connect with myself, the desire to connect with the creation, with the earth around me, the desire to connect with the divine. Like those four things we often talk about as our spirituality. For me, that's exactly what my creativity comes out of as well, is my desire for those connections, and also my reflecting on all the ways that gets shattered and broken and doesn't play out.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations. I'm the host of the podcast, Andy Dixon, and it's a pleasure to have you joining me again today. Today's guest is Joel McKerrow, an award-winning writer, speaker, educator, artist, and one of Australia's most successful internationally touring performance poets. He's the artist ambassador for Tearfund Australia and a huge part of the Justice Conference in Australia. Coincidentally, actually, as this podcast is released, I'm starting a creative writing course led by Joel and his friend Sabrina Lloyd, which I am super excited about. So hopefully you'll see some good creativity coming from this direction as a result of inspiration from Joel. In this conversation, we talk about his creativity, how that connects with his spirituality, which has changed over the years for him, how he got involved in issues of justice, and so much more. We even listened to one of his poems partway through the episode, released earlier this year. If you enjoy the episode, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, get this out there so that many, many more people can be inspired by Joel and what he has to say. He is inspiring, he's thought-provoking, and he's totally relatable, down-to-earth human being. This is episode 31 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Joel McKerrow. I'm here today with Joel McKerrow. Kia ora, Joel.
Wonderful to be here, Andy. Good to spend some time with you across the ditch.
Yeah. So obviously, I was about to say, where are you from? Obviously from Australia, as the
That's
across
right.
the ditch reference. But yeah, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm currently in Melbourne. It's a lovely sunny day here. I am a poet, and a writer and a storyteller in lots of different ways, but kind of poetry is the main thing that I have become known for over the last many years of doing so. I just love storytelling in whatever format that I can do it. So I write a lot of fiction. I speak at a lot of things. I do a bunch of storytelling in lots of different ways, but essentially, I'd call myself a storyteller that kind of plays and dabbles in lots of different art forms and ways of telling stories.
Yeah, awesome. Actually, that's been a theme of some of the recent podcasts as well, is this idea of storytelling, but seeing people do that in different ways. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
How did you get into poetry?
Well, poetry began for me a long time ago. Well, not long. I mean, how old am I now? I'm going to turn 40 next year. Can you even believe that? The years fly by. But
So I've just ticked over that last year.
Yeah, nice. So poetry began probably in my late 20s. So I was never really into poetry during school. It was taught very haphazardly. It wasn't taught well, as in most schools, but I fell in love with it as a kind of late 20-year-old, kind of discovering a way for me to kind of process through a bunch of stuff that was happening in my life, a bunch of experiences that I was having that was shaking my faith over the years. That was kind of a bit of a journey of deconstruction and questioning and challenging and wrestling that kind of went alongside this awakening journey of creativity within me. And so it was a beautiful way to kind of cathartically reflect on what I had been wrestling with at the time, on experiences that I was having overseas and here in Australia that were kind of shaking up my life and causing me not to just, I don't know, have that stable foundation that I once did. I think poetry is a beautiful way. Writing of any description is a beautiful way to reflect on those things. I was at a school yesterday talking about how it's kind of like we've got this balloon inside us that gets blown up and blown up and blown up, and just gets to the point of popping. And poetry for me has been this way to let some of the air out of that balloon. So it's been a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I mean, you've been all over the world with it. A number of years ago now, you were in the Individual World Poetry Slam.
Yes, yeah.
For those who are unaware, poetry slams are like a competition where you get judged by audience members, and to get to the world level, you're starting off with regionals and then ending up in national competitions, and so you've done all of that. What are some of your most memorable performances?
Oh, that's a good question. Most memorable performance. There's been many different ones for many different reasons. Maybe let me pick two. One, just, I don't know, it's just on top of my head, and it was a hilarious one. Is we were in, I was in Canada, in Montreal, and sitting in it was my day off. I was touring. I was doing a 6-month tour, no, 4 months tour of Canada, and was sitting there in kind of this Middle Eastern, maybe Lebanese Middle Eastern restaurant, and the owner comes out, and part of this cafe restaurant thing is that he pours you tea in kind of this traditional way, this beautiful up and down movement, and as he does so, he asks you for a story. And so so my friend that I was touring with, which I love, that model of running a cafe, he sits there and chats to his customers, is a beautiful thing. We're like, we're cool. poets from Australia, we're touring through. He's like, get up and do a poem for us. We're like, okay. And then we hear this one of the kitchen hands yelling out, do something funny. So we both kind of I had a poem about my red hair and dreadlocks and stuff, and my friend had a poem about peeing her pants, and so we did these poems. And then the guy to, like, there might have been 20 or 30 people, he kind of gathers everyone around in the cafe, and we perform our poems. And then the kitchen hand that had yelled out, do something funny, he comes out, he's like, I'm running a comedy thing tonight, could you guys come along and perform your pieces? And we're like, sure. He's like, okay, here, I'll just write, I've got to go back to work, but I'll just write the address, just turn up at this time and I'll see you there. So we turn up at the address, and it turns out it's the at that point it was called the Metropolis, which was like the biggest venue in Montreal. Like, it was Lady Gaga the week before, and so it was this massive, like, few thousand person venue. And we were like, and it was the International Montreal Comedy Festival, their big comedy gala. So one of their big comedy galas, and so suddenly we were like the English speaking between all of these French speaking comedians, getting up in front of this massive kind of gathering of people and sharing our funny poems. It was just one of those weird experiences. Where you kind of reflect back and go, I don't know how the heck that happened, but geez, it was fun. It was a good time. Yeah, so awesome. that was a beautiful moment. Another beautiful moment for me has probably in relation to New Zealand, was at Passion Fest. I'm sure there's some listeners who go to Passion Fest, and I was there. I've been there a few different times, and had a beautiful week performing a few years ago. And at the end, just performed 2 pieces that were it was just one of those moments. Like, as a performer, you can do the same 2 pieces. You can do them one night and it's flat. You can do them the next night and something's happened, and you can do them next night. It just feels like this transcendent, beautiful moment that everyone gets caught up in. They're exact same pieces, kind of performed exactly the same way, but there's just something that happens. And it was one of those. It was the morning at the end of Passion Fest in one of those smelly tents, and it was just this beautiful moment of sharing, where I ended up in tears and a lot of the audience ended up in tears, and then as is tradition in Passion Fest and other places, I think it was this beautiful moment where some of the Maori women got up and began to sing as a response to this, as a response to my performance, and it was beautiful, really beautiful. And then one of my brothers, one of my friends, gets up right in front of me and starts doing the haka straight to me, and I just lost my shit, really. Like, as he stood up, and then a bunch of others in the audience, including some beautiful New Zealand friends of mine, Hannah Chapman, some of you might know, just stands up it was. I felt like in the moment of performance, I had given absolutely everything. Like, it was that kind of performance, and then it was like instantly the response to fill me back up with these powerful warrior Maori voices was like, oh, I can't. It still sends shivers down my spine and makes and brings tears to my eyes whenever I think of that. That was definitely one of the most beautiful moments of performing.
I love too that like you don't immediately jump to, well, I managed to perform in front of this many thousand people, or I performed with this famous person. Hearing you talk about it is like, these are the ones that moved you, or, whether it's in that kind of emotional deep way, or in that like, what the hell's happening kind of way.
Yeah.
That sounds hilarious, that comedy fest one.
It was great.
Apart from being a comedian, you are like you say, you're a poet, but you're also you're a playwright, you're an author, you're an educator, you've got your own podcast as well, and you've also got an art exhibition. So you've got all these things going on. What is it that you love most about what you do?
Yeah, good question. I think there's two parts to it. One, what I love most about what I do is the part that relates to me in terms of my own, as I'm creating in that moment. I love creative flow. Like, it really is an addiction. And it sends off all the endorphins and the hormones, et cetera, that you get from highs, from drug-induced highs. The creative flow moments where it's just you and the paper, and the world dissipates, the world falls away, and it's not like your problems fall away in terms of them being ignored, but it's just this moment where you truly do feel like a vessel, a vessel for the divine to flow through, for the deepest parts of yourself to flow out onto the page. I love those moments of creativity, be it through writing or be it through painting. So painting has become a thing for me. I never knew that I could paint. I'd always told myself for years and years that I wasn't. Well, I mean, ever since I was, I don't know, a kid, that I couldn't paint. And then I was just into words. I loved words. And then at the end of 2000, just before COVID, I toured the release of my book, and a friend invited me along to an art studio and that she runs, and I just kind of sat along in one of her lessons and was like, oh, actually, I love this. Like, I really love this. And it became a bit of a savior for me last year during the lockdowns and stuff, and homeschooling, etc., where it was hard to write and focus on that, but I just got to paint. And so I love losing myself in those moments. And then in terms of, for me, when I bring it out to the world, the best moments are where it so obviously moves someone and resonates in them and changes something in them. And I hear back from people, whether it's straight after a performance, whether it's after I've been at a school, or whatever it might be, or someone sends me an email later on after something and just says, what you said there, it was exactly what I needed to hear at exactly the right moment. And you articulated what I couldn't articulate. And I feel like I just got an email the other day from a lady who did one of my courses, who I didn't realize as she was doing this course was suicidal, and just didn't want, like, suicidal ideation kind of stuff, didn't want to live anymore as she came into this course, and was just like, oh, I'll do this creative writing course, and kind of came out the other end and was like, I have a reason to live now. Like I have
Wow.
something to live for. And so when you see lives changed
Yeah.
because you just get to play with creativity and share it with the world, it's nothing better. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've
Mm.
found that with my creativity too, that those
Mm.
moments where it makes a difference for someone just means so much more than any kind of applause or,
Yeah.
people telling you you're really good or anything like that. Um,
Yeah.
Interesting you talk about the painting and how you told yourself for years that you couldn't do it. We had a guest last year who is an artist, a full-time artist, and
Mm.
she got told by her high school art teacher that she wasn't any good, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
he was her teacher for 3 years and didn't believe in her, and then she didn't
It's
paint
crazy.
for 30 years, and
Far out.
is now an international award-winning artist.
It's amazing, isn't it?
After not doing it for 30 years, she just kind of picked it up and is amazing. And I think there's so much to be said for the things that we tell ourselves or the things that other people tell us about what we
Yeah.
can and can't do.
Totally.
And so
And
fantastic,
yeah.
fantastic for you that you've found this other avenue to go, well, actually, I love this thing too. And
Yeah, it's been a beautiful thing, and I agree. I think we all have those shutdown moments where someone or something or our own negative self-talk or a teacher who just had their own issues
yeah,
shut our creativity down. For me, it's a really sad thing to see, and that's one of the joys of my life is seeing people come to life in their creativity again,
yeah,
and to challenge those stories that we tell ourselves because we've been shut down in the past. It's
yeah.
so important, so crucial.
You also see creativity quite clearly through everything you do. Creativity is more than just about being creative for art's sake. There's a
Mm,
depth to what you're doing,
mm,
and one of the things that your whole podcast revolves around this connection between creativity and spirituality.
yeah.
Do you want to just I don't know, share with us where do you see that link? Because a lot of my experience in the church has been, if you're a musician, you can join the worship band, but
Yeah,
but
yeah,
otherwise, there hasn't necessarily been too much of a connection for people between their spirituality and their creativity, and a lot of times
yeah,
it's like, well, I'm a Christian and I'm also an artist,
yeah,
and it's a separate thing. How for you does that go together?
yeah. Good question. I think, and I was going to say, in there, it's sad as well. Like if artistry is used within the church, it's often just an illustration for the more important thing, which is the sermon. And
Totally. Yeah, and
um,
and
I,
and you and it's only ever connected if you're actually painting pictures of Jesus. Um,
yeah, that's
and
right.
other than
Or lions, or lambs.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which it's an incredibly sad thing, and it means I think that there's many artists who feel very lonely in their endeavors. Many artists who haven't been able to bring together their spirituality, their faith, with their artistry because no one's taught them how. No one's taught them that these two um, are incredibly linked together, and I don't see much of a difference between my spirituality and my creativity. I see them both as coming from the same drives and the same desires within me. So the desire to connect with others, the desire to connect with myself, the desire to connect with the creation, with the earth around me, the desire to connect with the divine. Like those four things we often talk about as our spirituality, like relationship with God, relationship with self, relationship with creation, relationship with others. For me, that's exactly what my creativity comes out of as well,
yeah,
is my desire for those connections, my seeking to be one, like that oneness with each of those things, and also my reflecting on all the ways that gets shattered and broken and doesn't play out. I think artistry, as spirituality should, has this beautiful thing of holding together. It's what I call kind of holding together our aching pain and our delicious hope. Bringing these two things and refusing to let go of either, I think we need to do that in our spirituality. And most of the time, again, we often go straight to the delicious hope, and we don't sit in the lament and the aching pain and the darkness of life, and that God often doesn't seem to be around, and God can feel like a real prick sometimes, and we can really feel alone in our faith, in our walk, in our spirituality, in our humanity. And because it is our humanity, therefore it does play out in our creativity. And so within our creativity, I think holding on to both of these as well, and as singer songwriters, it's singing the lament songs. As poets, it's writing the lament poems. As painters, it's going to those, it's being willing, I think, to go to those dark places, to those painful places, and in the midst of that as well, to find the light that is there, to find that delicious hope that is there, to kind of name the darkness and the pain, to name the, be it internal realities or social realities. To I'm thinking of that song by, I don't know, Casey Chambers is an Aussie. Do you guys know Casey Chambers over there?
I don't. Some of our listeners
No.
might, but no.
So she is an Australian, or as we say on the lands that we now call Australia, she is an Australian singer. She sang a song called Ignorance, and the chorus was, "If you're not pissed off with the world, then you're just not paying attention." And so I think allowing ourselves to feel that pissed off nature with the world, to feel that lament with the world, and also with our own internal and spirituality. I think that our creativity and our spirituality is all the ways we can name our disconnection and seek and desire for that connection, for that beautiful hope. So therefore, I don't see them as two separate things. They're just the outflowing of those desires within us.
I love that connection, or that idea of the connection, but also the broken connection. And I think where I've seen creativity done badly in church spaces, it's been trying to not think about the broken connection as much as all the positive stuff. And yet actually some of the deepest thing come out of the observation of that brokenness, and of the where's the hope in that. And I know, I mean, for me personally, poetry has been a huge way of processing depression and anxiety, and other things that have been really challenging spaces for me. And it's been a way of essentially what the psalmists were doing, going, God, what the hell, what's going, without necessarily even writing a poem to God, but it's still just that lament coming out of you of going, this doesn't feel how it's supposed to be. There's something going wrong here, and whether that society that's doing that, whether it's just the mood I'm in at the moment, whatever. I love that idea that actually that is spirituality, tapping into those spaces and being honest about them. Which I mean, one of my favorite things I do with my poetry is I go into the Bridge, which is a addiction clinic in Christchurch, and I run workshops with the guys going through rehab, and they're all expecting to hate it, but all end up just actually really loving it, because they're able to tap into stuff that they haven't even thought that's how they felt. I've had so many of them say to me, "Oh, I never knew I felt that way about my dad," or stuff like that. Is just, and I love the idea that is spirituality. That's not something separate from spirituality. That's actually part of our spiritual journey, because spirituality actually encompasses everything. So that's really beautiful.
One of my favorite poets, John O'Donoghue, says, poetry is a fascinating conversation with your unknown self. Fascinating conversation with your unknown self. And I think especially for us, I'm just saying us, but those who are listening, who are passionate about, be it social justice issues or changing the world, etc., etc. One of the communities over here, a monastic community called the Transfiguration community, one of the values of their community is to disarm the world. We first need to disarm our own hearts.
Yeah.
I've taken that phrase on as really as my own value, because I think it's so crucial, and I see so many people passionate about changing the world, but unless we're willing to sit in the pain and the sorrow and the how our own hearts have become guarded and armed against the world, we just, in the midst of our passion to help the world, we leave a wake of destruction and destructive relationships behind us. So I think and it's poetry, it's creativity that helps us, songwriting, it's painting, it's all these things that helps us to name these realities that we'd rather ignore, but I think we have to go into them if we want to live healthy, whole lives.
You mentioned the social justice.
Yes.
That's been a big part of your journey as well.
Yeah.
You've got strong ties to Tearfund Australia and to the Justice Conference Australia.
Yeah.
What is it that drew you into being passionate about that?
So I grew up middle class, white, conservative, evangelical Australia land, and that was my. I talk about it. I've written a book called "Woven: A Faith for the Dissatisfied," which is kind of a lot of this journey for me. And I talk about it in the book as kind of the fishbowl that I grew up in. The phrase "a fish in a bowl doesn't know that it's wet." It's been swimming around its watery environment. I'd been swimming around my entitled, privileged environment my whole life as growing up, and I had no idea the reality of the world outside of that fishbowl. And so one of the experiences that I talk about in the book is being over on the border of Thailand and Burma, and going to an orphanage there. It was kind of one of my big first experiences outside my fishbowl, and coming into the orphanage at the same time as a mother arrived with her sick baby on her back that she'd been traveling through Burma trying to find medical care for, and the baby had just died on her back, and I arrived to this wailing lady, and my first job kind of at this place was to go up and to dig a grave for this baby boy, and I remember digging a grave and placing this boy inside this grave, and it was one of the shattering moments of my life in terms of my faith and all that kind of stuff. I got everything kind of deconstructed and shattered, kind of stemming out of that moment and a number of others. But it also started my journey in terms of social justice to really begin to go, if I had a kid, at that point I didn't have kids, but if I had a kid who was sick, I'd just take them to the hospital, to the doctor, and this lady couldn't do that. How unfair is the world? How unjust is the world? And so it kind of began a whole journey for me, stemming out of that moment and a few others at the same time. That was like, what does this actually look like then for me to engage in the real world around me, not just the fake world of the Western dream, but so it feels like my whole life then has been kind of one blindfold after another being taken off my eyes. I remember kind of around the same time having being invited to go along to a drop-in centre for street workers, for prostitutes who had come in off the corner and were having a meal and having a shower and having a chat. And then I remember standing beside one and thinking to myself, this must have been just before, like it was around the same time, thinking to myself, I've called myself a Jesus follower all my life, yet here I am washing dishes with this lady and who Jesus would have spent all of his time with, these kind of people, and I've spent like none of my life. And I've I haven't been following Jesus. It was one of those very confrontational moments of, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Christ follower. I go to church and youth group and Bible studies, have all my life, I pray the prayers, I do the thing, but actually following Jesus looks very different to how I've been living. So though a number of things that happened around then kind of caused me to go on the journey into social justice that I have for many years since.
And great that you could then have a really obvious connection with your, like, as you discovered poetry as well. There was a real easy link between those two worlds. I often explain to people about poetry, or the spoken word poetry, performance poetry, as being like the early rap scene, I guess, where it was a cry from the margins. And I find that that poetry lends itself to that as well, that so many of the poets are people who are those people on the margins, but then also like you, as this white middle class conservative Christian guy, can also tap into that space and use that to help you process and find a different space as well. So just beautiful. You've, like I say, you've done a lot of poetry stuff with Tearfund and with the Justice Conference. You recently released one called Reset, which I shared on my social media, and I thought just a really powerful examination of what's been going on for the last year or so. What we'll do is I'll just pause the podcast and insert this, and then we'll come back and have a bit of a chat about it.
Great. Enjoy, listeners.
A blinking cursor, a frozen screen, 2020, an overloaded system in so many ways. And don't we wish it was as easy as just turning it off and on again? A reboot and a new startup screen to load it all up just as we were. Surely it was all running fine before this. Our lives, this software, application after application, weren't we performing at our best? The fastest processing speed yet? Actually, beneath it all, perhaps this operating system has been struggling for some time now. Faulty circuitry, a motherboard too hot, an inevitable system failure. All this doing and running, a mainframe that might have made our apps run smoothly, yet for the majority they knew something was wrong well before we.
The current momentum to bring about lasting change.
You see, sometimes a virus just shows us what in fact has been destroying us for a long time now. So here's the thing. What if this virus is not just an opportunity to turn it off and on again, to return to the same way we've always been operating, to go back to the old normal? What if this is actually an invitation to reset, to preset a better way of being, deflect from the rat race, reflect a more compassionate holding of ourselves and others? What if we took the time to turn our eyes away from these computer screens, to look up and see the people in the room, the trees in your street, the flowers in your yard? What if a reset looked like learning how to listen again, turning off the electricity so you might elect to run from a different energy, to rewire some circuitry and remember the reason you sit at the computer in the first place? Because I know it's a fantasy that we could just leave it all entirely, walk away from our reality, but reality changes when we learn how to see it differently. This is what reset is all about. This is the invitation of this time. Remember when your parents swore you would get square eyes from staring at a square screen? But what if it's time to have beautiful eyes from staring at beautiful things? Hopeful eyes, compassionate eyes, Jesus eyes, to reset your life.
Cool. So that was Reset, and how did that come about? Was it something that you just had burning inside of you, and you went to them and said, "Hey, I've got this thing," or did they come to you and say, "Hey, can you write something for us?" How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I'm the artist ambassador for Tearfund Australia, and so I work with them on a number of different projects, both kind of doing my own thing that they then connect into, and I talk about Tearfund and connect people to them, but also I work with them on the different projects they're doing. So at the moment, it's this year is like the 50th year of Tearfund Australia, so it's their Jubilee year, and so they've kind of shaped their whole year around this idea of reset. And so they had come to me to say, could you write a poem around reset? But of course, it's like I'm not just writing it because they asked me to. It's something that I had been wrestling with throughout this year of lockdown and homeschooling kids and all that stuff of wanting things to go back to normal, and yet knowing that perhaps this is calling us out of what has been normal. And the kind of our addiction to progress and production and all that kind of stuff that we have in our society, and being forced just to stop, so many things being forced to stop and reflect, and that this could be a moment to reset our lives, to shape our lives around a different set of rhythms than we have in the past. I think is really, I mean, it's crucial for any of us to choose the rhythms by which we live. Otherwise, they'll be chosen for us by our society. And so to have a kind of circuit breaker of this virus and everything stopping and everyone questioning what they're doing and how they're doing it, it's such a important moment for us to go, well, what are the rhythms that I want to shape my life around? How can I not just go back to the old, but how can I reset in a different way? And I love that. I mean, the connection to the Jubilee kind of it's a beautiful that it is Tearfund's kind of Tearfund Australia's Jubilee year, and which is the year. Jubilee was the year of resetting of the, in terms of biblical stuff, history of the everything going back to kind of equal level, slaves being set free and land being given back, and everything kind of starts again was the hope for Jubilee. And so to have those two confluence together, I think is a really beautiful thing. So it was kind of out of all of those thoughts of being stuck in lockdown, trying to work out what life's going to look like coming out of it.
Yeah. And I think that's really powerful because, like you, I've heard a lot of people saying, I can't wait till things get back to normal. Actually, for us New Zealanders, life is actually fairly normal, apart from that we don't have tourists. But we've been in that privileged position where actually a lot of life does just carry on. And yet there is still this awareness of there's this global thing happening. It does affect us, maybe not as much as others, but actually is going back to normal what we really want. And, you know, I live in Christchurch where it's just been 10 years since we had a devastating earthquake. And, you know, one of the big things that happened out of that was that, like, people got to know their neighbours that they'd never known before. And there was a whole lot of, you know, really awesome new stuff that happened that hadn't happened for a long time. And 10 years on, I look at it and go, actually, it would have been cool if that carried on, you know, maybe we have just gone back to normal in some ways. And just recently it's been 2 years since we had, 51 people died in mosque shootings. Gunmen came in. That's right. And, you know, again, it changed things at the time. Yeah. And yet only 2 years on, it's like, well, has it changed it actually? You know, and that's what I love about this idea of reset, that it's a challenge to go, what are we going to do here with this opportunity? You know, it's not an opportunity we would have chosen, but it's what we've got. So what do we do with that? And I love that heart, that it's not just looking and going, oh well, all this stuff is bad. It's just going, what do we want for our future? What do we want for the future of the world? So, when you think about all that kind of stuff, all the social justice thing, what is it that gives you hope?
What gives me hope at the moment is probably seeing the lives of people and hearing the stories of people who are just doing the stuff, who are continuing on. I think about my friend Anna Jane Joyner, who I think was at the New Zealand Justice Conference with me a few years ago. She's a climate activist, and her father's a very prominent evangelical Pentecostal pastor over in the US who was very Trump supporting, et cetera, that whole tribe. And to see her, so she's kind of had a lot of friction with her father over the years. But she's someone who just inspires me to keep going. Like she has, for so many reasons, she should be the kind of person who would just be like, I am so done. Like, even in the face, I mean, many of us in the face of climate justice, of climate change, it feels so overwhelming and unhopeful, and like, are things ever going to change? And have we just reached way past the point where even if we change things, we're just screwed anyway? To see simply the life of someone who is still choosing the activist life, in the face of all the global problems, in the face of family who is not supportive, in the face of her own kind of mental health issues and her own working through all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So just someone like that. That's just someone off the top of my head. To see that life and the life of so many people who are continuing to do the stuff, continuing to create, continuing to push through. It's the people, it's the stories of people doing the stuff. That's what inspires me and gives me hope to keep going.
Cool. Oh, that's fantastic. And as we near the end, I do want to touch on your book, Woven, which you released in 2019.
Yes, right before COVID. Good time to launch a book.
yeah. Which actually, before we get to the book, I heard you talking about how you were in the air when rules got changed and you ended up stranded.
I was. I was.
Tell us that.
I was on my way to a conference in the US, in North Carolina, and I arrived basically as I left, things were beginning to, like, my wife and I had the conversation of, should I be going? Should I not go? It was just at that moment, like there was a weekend where everything just took off, where I was like, oh crap, this is massive. It was right. I was in the air right at that moment where our Prime Minister did kind of his big first announcement. Trump did his first big announcement. Things started closing down. So I was essentially in the air during those two announcements. We decided that I'd go, and just, it was kind of like, worst comes to worst, like in a week or two I'll have to come back or something. Like, we just decided to go for it. So I was there for 12 hours in San Francisco, kind of got out of the plane, was like, crap, okay, things have changed. 12 hours, my conference was cancelled. I bought a flight on the way home, and that flight ended up being delayed and then cancelled overnight. So I was stuck in a hotel. I was in aeroplanes and the airports waiting for flights for like, what did I work out? It was something like 36 hours out of a 2.5-3 day period. Like, it was just insane. It was not a fun it was not a fun time to be flying around the world.
No,
but I arrived back, and we went into lockdown before everything else went into lockdown, because I had to, and I get to be in this beautiful place, and I get to do this with my family, and I just have it so much better than the millions and millions and millions of people all over the world who have been forced into poverty because of this pandemic. My issues are nothing compared to so many people. Onto
the book. This is a bit of a fanboy moment, I guess, because the book for me is probably one of the best books I've read in the last couple of years in terms of its impact on me. One of the things I like the most, apart from the fact that rather than being a bullet point guide to life, you are a storyteller, so it is you tell stories the whole way through the book, and so it's really engaging. But I think for me it was the language you used, where you were exploring, shifting faith and shifting beliefs. And a lot of the time we hear people talk about that as deconstruction. And I've always found that as my beliefs have changed and shifted, I've kind of understood that, there's some things to pull apart from what I used to believe, but it seemed very linear, and it was hard to figure out, well, where does this deconstruction stop and where does some construction happen? And whereas you use terms like sculpted and unraveled and woven, and for me it was just really beautiful images of actually that not everything about the old was bad. There are things of that actually get woven into what is the new, and Yeah, I mean, for you, how was that process of writing that? Because it seemed like
Mm.
a lot of years worth of thought had then sort of eventuated in this thing that you produced.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lifetime of thoughts came into that book. It really did. Kind of a lifetime of my thinking around how spiritual formation happens and how identity formation happens. And I'd been working for years and years and years with young people in colleges doing kind of spiritual formation programs and that kind of stuff before poetry took over my life. And 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 in my own life. And so it was a moment when I wrote that book. It was a time to take all of that and reflect on my own life and the stories of the countless amounts of people who are walking out the back door of the church, um, and to try to, because I had come to a place, and a lot of the writing of this book began when I was on the holy island of Lindisfarne over in, and I talk about this in the book, over in on the border of Scotland and England, where I had 3 months on an island there, this beautiful Celtic island with a really incredible community there. And I was reflecting on that it was through kind of this Celtic understanding of the world, Celtic Christianity, and and the values they uphold, etc., etc., that I was able to go, I don't just have to, exactly as you said, I don't just have to throw the faith out. And I think the way that I phrase it in the book is we don't need to throw the baby of faith out with the bathwater of cultural Christianity,
Yeah.
which is our kind of, it's an easy way out. It really is an easy way out, I think, just to go, well, screw it all.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna throw all that out and either become like a bitter, cynical bastard, or just kind of leave the faith entirely, whatever it is. I think a harder place to sit in is what I call that woven place, where those unraveled threads and those things that don't fit, those things that we want to rebel against and run away from, to able to thread those together with the beautiful things of my upbringing, the beautiful things of the faith, I think is really crucial for us to then to be able to say, I can still be a Christian, a Christ follower. I can still call myself a Christian, but that Christianity looks very, very, very different to the faith that I grew up in. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. That's a wonderful thing, something we should be celebrating, what that difference can kind of look like. So the book was a way, I think, for me to explore that, to help people not just, like, there's been a number of things, as you said, books and podcasts, etc., done around deconstruction, but the heart of this book really for me was about reconstruction, about reweaving, about how do we hold this thing together, not just tear this thing apart. And as you said, none of it's linear, like, and that's a major part of the book that I go into as well, is it's not this movement from deconstruction to reconstruction, or from having a sculpted faith, which is kind of sculpted by your community and church that you grew up in, to an unraveled, to then a woven. It's within us all the time. Things are unraveling and things are reweaving, and my sculpted reality, I'm constantly still having to recognize how sculpted my view of the world is by my male privileged white middle class perspective. To deny that I am sculpted is to deny my entitlement. Like, it's to pretend that it's not there. And so I think our sculpted selves, our unraveled selves, and our woven selves, they are always going around, always affecting us, always within us. And at times we can kind of lean into each of those and work out the way forward.
Yeah. And I love too that in the book you explore the idea that actually questions, doubts, those sort of things are helpful for faith. You know, they're not a distraction from it, which
that's right.
It's so easy to feel like if you've got questions, there's something going wrong here. But and it's come up on with a few other guests as well, that actually, you know, doubt and questioning is actually really important for faith, and I love that idea comes through in your book as well. So no, thank you for writing that. It's been a real blessing to me, and I'm sure to a number of others. And I totally recommend that people go and buy it and read it. What's next for Joel McKerrow?
Working out what life looks like now that we are coming out of COVID here in Australia. Partly that, like I'm the kind of person who has about um, 10 different things on the go at the same time. So I have fiction books that I'm writing, and screenplays that I'm writing, and poems that I'm writing, and paintings that I'm painting, and non-fiction books around story and creativity that I'm writing. Like, I'm constantly doing things. I
Skateboards
would
that
have
you're
just
sanding.
skateboards that I'm sanding. That's right. I would have just released, as this comes out, a part of the painting thing coming together with the poetry has been this new project called Human, an exploration of the inner life, which is essentially taking. I've been painting the different kind of using the framework of the Enneagram plus a few more types and understandings or ways of seeing the world. There's 12 different paintings that each have a watercolor painting and a skateboard with the painting inked on it, and a poem. And that poem I've worked with musicians from around the world. So it's kind of each thing has these 4 parts to it. And it's my first kind of online gallery exhibition thing. So people can go and check that out if they all. I mean, anything of mine, all my stuff is at joelmckerrow.com. If people are interested, um, they can find that there and go and kind of explore the exhibition and hear the music, and especially if you're into the Enneagram, but you don't have to be into the Enneagram to learn from
Yeah.
it and grow with it and spend that time kind of self-reflecting.
So yeah, just a lot more for you of keeping the balls in the air and figuring out which ones to keep juggling and which ones not to, and see where it goes.
Yeah. I think it's the life of an artist, of a full-time artist, is you have 10 balls up in the air, probably many more actually, but 10 kind of creative projects up in the air at a time that you're trying to work out how to play with.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. I love your heart for justice and how that combines with your creativity. And
thank you.
Would really recommend that people check out your poems. There's lots of them available through your website, on YouTube, that sort of thing. And I'll put a whole bunch of links in the show notes as well, so people can find it really easily. But yeah, just want to say thanks for what you're doing to help to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
My pleasure. Great to be here and chat about it.
Hello, hello heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
What a beautiful conversation with a beautiful human being. I don't know about you, but listening to this again has been so inspiring to me to keep doing good in the world, to tap into my creativity and to let it be a blessing for others, and to explore ways in which my faith and my life have been sculpted, and to see things with new eyes. If you enjoyed my conversation with Joel, then definitely check out his podcast, The Deep Place, on creativity and spirituality. It's full of pure gold. And make sure you head to his website, joelmckerrow.com, to check out his art exhibition and poetry. Human is the name of that, as well as finding out what else he's up to. And like I said in the interview, I simply can't rate his book highly enough. Get it, read it, have your life changed. Links for all those in the show notes. So as we come to the end of the episode, Joel, here is a simple blessing for you. As you continue to live your life and to create in the myriad of ways that you do, may you continue to find life and love in your relationships with others, self, creation, and the divine, and may others be transformed as you invite them to join you in those spaces. May you continue to see the creativity that you get to play with every day make a meaningful difference in the lives of those you encounter, even in ways that you would have never expected, touching hearts and lives in meaningful ways. May you continue to find joy and laughter in the world around you, in your wife and children, in your writing and performing, and in the memory of French-Canadian comedy festivals that you didn't expect to be performing at. May your children grow in their awareness of life and the divine as you immerse them in a world of storytelling and justice, of exploration and adventure. May you know the comfort of the divine in times of aching pain, and may you be able to sit in that place, finding the delicious hope that is present there, your creativity bursting forth from within that collision of contradictions. May you continue to have your eyes open to ways in which you have been sculpted, of which you were yet unaware. And may the constant dance of being unravelled and woven present life and faith and art and family to you in ways that you never dreamed of. And may you know that you really do live the way of Jesus, giving of yourself that others may be blessed, and speaking words of life to all who pass you by. Thanks to Strawn again for the music, to Rangi for the karakia, the Lord's Prayer, and thanks to you all for listening. Join me next time when I interview Liz Raitt-Smith, who uses art to support recovering addicts, people struggling with their mental health, and people currently in prison. Another fantastic conversation. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Homai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro o mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia. Engari whakaorangi a mātou I te kino.